Hi, I'm Detlef, the CEO of APIIDA AG, the recognized API management experts. We are very proud to welcome so many API professionals today to our API 3.0 Control Plane product launch event. Today is a remarkable day for us. Over 100 API engineering projects delivered for major international customers over the last 3 years. Over 100 robust and high-value business-critical data supply chains delivered in time, in budget, and above customer expectations. We went beyond and did a comprehensive research. And as well, we did contribute to a lot of standardizations organizations like, for example, Open API Foundation, Gaia-X, and Catena-X in order to advance the API economy. All this brought us to the conclusion that there is an urgent need for an independent and intelligent API control mechanism, especially when it comes to strategic API-first approaches. 3 years of intensive and interactive design and development work are done. Today, we are proud to announce our API 3.0 control plane for strategic and federated API management. The API control plane is a fundamental shift how API management should be done in the future. It is designed and engineered to become the single source of API truth, independent and intelligent, made by senior API experts for true API professionals. Thanks for joining us today. Armin, please go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Detlef, for the introduction. And hello and welcome also from my end. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Armin Stefan. I'm the COO of APIIDA, and I'm really proud to welcome so many of you around the globe to today's call. Now, before we go into the product itself, let me spend a few minutes on, first of all, the agenda and some logistics for today. And we're going to start with a quick session, just a few minutes on the case for federated API management. So basically, what is API? What is federated API management, and why do you need it? We're then going to continue, I said, diving into the product itself, going to talk about its capabilities and use cases. We're going to give you a demo of the product, so you're going to see it live and in action. And then we'll spend a few minutes on how you can actually get access and get your hands on the product yourself. So for logistics, your lines are muted until the end of the session, where you have then the opportunity to ask questions live on the call here. Should you have questions in between, please use the Q&A function of the Zoom client, and we'll try to answer them either throughout the session, or we'll then read them out at the end of the session. All right, so with no further ado, I said, let's talk about the case for federated API management. And I think we move on one slide. Move forward, not backward. All right, good. So I think you all know the saying of software is eating the world, right? And if software is eating the world, I think you have also heard that APIs are giving it teeth, right? So many business models nowadays that we came to love over the last couple of years, take Uber as an example, or Airbnb, are actually built, right, on software that allows that transformational change. And that software, again, is built on building blocks, which we call APIs. So we consider APIs the building blocks for digital transformation. And APIs actually allow us to establish new revenue streams, drive innovative ideas to the market, right, and deliver an outstanding, competitive, differentiating customer experience. And I think APIs, and I think you all are aware of, are everywhere, right? We are using APIs throughout the day, whether in private life, whether in business life, very often without realizing in the first place that the applications, the services we are using are actually powered by APIs. I've brought with me a statement, actually from this week, I guess, from Baptiste, who is the CEO of API Days. By the way, we will be in Paris in 2 weeks' time, so I hope we'll see many of you live in Paris. Please make sure you stop by at our booth at API Days. And Baptiste really said, new business models, it's APIs, right? New platform models, it's APIs, and so forth. It is APIs all the way down, right? So we'll face APIs every single day in every interaction, basically, that we have set both in private and business. So it's an API-driven economy. So it's no wonder, right, that companies are investing in APIs and continue to develop. Yeah, thank you. Continue to develop APIs at a very fast pace. So the numbers that you can see on here is a recent study by Gartner, whereby they are comparing the use of APIs pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And what you can see very clearly is during those last 3 years, the number of APIs that enterprises have developed and are consuming has again increased dramatically, specifically when it comes to leveraging partner-related APIs, third-party APIs, to basically further expand your ecosystem, add additional value to the services that you deliver as an organization. I also have some additional numbers just to give us an idea what we're talking about. And the first one is actually from Akamai, who have found that 83% of all hits to their platform are actually API hits, and they are growing by 30% year over year, and are expected to reach 42 trillion hits by 2024. And the second number I have for you is from Cloudflare, who said that API traffic grew 300% faster than web traffic in 2020. So it clearly is an API-driven economy that we're living in. So it's no wonder that companies, as I said, are keeping investing and developing APIs at a very fast pace. But the challenge there is that the ability to develop and publish APIs, meanwhile, outperforms the abilities of the management capabilities that they have for those APIs. And so this one is another interesting number I found. It's a prediction again by Gartner, who say that they believe that by 2025, less than 50% of enterprise APIs will actually be managed due to that explosive growth in APIs and the lacking, if you will, ability by management components to deal with that growth. So that clearly is a challenge if we want to continue to derive the value that we are looking for from APIs. So we need to deal with those, right? And if you look at those challenges in a bit more detail, then next to the sheer number of APIs that are being developed and are being used, are being consumed, we found other challenges, right? In regards to there are use cases out there basically that require, if you will, specialized APIs, right? Think of, for example, you have, request response APIs like REST APIs, GraphQL or so. You find a number of gateways that can deal with that type of traffic out there. Then again, you have things like asynchronous traffic, like event-driven APIs or streaming APIs. And then again, there are gateways that are specialized for that kind of traffic. So what we find nowadays is that pretty much every organization has at least 2 or 3 different type of API gateway or runtime technology, as we'd like to call it. Or think about legacy systems, right? Some will have to keep existing gateways in place because, for example, they still have backend system that only support SOAP traffic, for example, and modern, if you will, gateways are not capable of dealing with SOAP traffic. That can all be reasons, why you have more than one API runtime or API gateway asset. And that, of course, has implications on the business, right? From the sheer cost due to the complexity that you have in regards to dealing with those different technologies, with those different runtimes, to the ability, as said, to manage, for example, security and compliance for those systems. So it has implications, and it slows the business down if you are not capable of dealing with those new requirements, if you're not capable of keeping up with that pace of growth for your API ecosystem. So we believe that the role of API management needs to change. What we mean by that, and here's the example of, assume you have, in this case, 2 to 3 different API runtimes for the reasons that I just gave you. And that's quite a common scenario in our customer base as well. Many are currently in the phase of transitioning, for example, on-premise implementations of a gateway to a cloud-based environment in order to add to their computing capabilities and for reliability reasons, for example. And at the same time, they are now looking at leveraging those cloud-native API gateways by, for example, AWS or Azure, excuse me, or GCP with APIIDA. And so they now need to be dealing with those different technologies and be able to manage them consistently, again, to continue to reap the benefits from a business point of view. And what we're seeing today, and again, confirmed by Gartner as well, is that gateways are really becoming a commodity. They are replaceable, they are interchangeable, if you will, because they are more or less providing similar functionalities. Even if you look at those different requirements in each of the categories, you do find several options to choose from. So they become commodity. The same, if you will, goes for other API management disciplines like the development, the design, and the testing of your APIs. You should really be able to use your preferred tooling for those disciplines. This is all interchangeable. These are all tactical disciplines, if you will, right? But when it comes to what really matters for the business, you will have to look at what we would call the core, the central capability for API management, which is the management and the governance capability. And that is what we think will be strategic for organizations going forward. So you can choose whatever gateway you would want to look at, what you want to apply for the job, what is best suited for the job. You should be able to choose a set tooling for those disciplines, again, like design, development, according to your likings. But you really need to focus in on a central management and governance component that allows you to manage all these different runtime environments across those different platforms, okay? And that's why we believe API management really needs to shift from a tactical to a strategic component of your IT strategy. So from a technical necessity, if you will, to strategic, meaning towards a strategic business enabler, really. So that API management helps you to increase the business agility for your organization by reducing complexity and cost, by driving innovation, increase speed to market, for example, and by enhancing security and governance. And the ability to manage multi-vendor environments across platforms, so on-premise, in the cloud, or in hybrid architectures, is what we would call federated API management. Think of it as centralized management, but decentralized execution of your APIs. I'll leave you with a statement by Mark O'Neill, who is VP analyst by Gartner, who said in a recent conversation that we had with him about our new offering, our new product, he said, multi-vendor management is the holy grail of API management. And that is exactly what we are delivering with the APIIDA API Control Plane, helping you to increase business agility by reducing complexity and cost, driving innovation, and enhancing security and governance. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague Peter, who heads up sales and business development, who has spent the last couple of weeks talking with some of our customers and get some feedback and get their input. And I'm now going to turn it over to Peter, please.
Thank you, Armin. And yes, he has talked about everything I would like to talk about already. So talking with customers. So what we did in the beginning, first we built a project to decouple the management from a specific runtime. And we did this very successful, and many customers of the world using our solution already. But then we followed the vision to create a control plane. And as Armin already mentioned, this should be meant to manage different vendors underneath. And we talked to our customers and said, what do you need? What do you want? And one of the customers is Telefónica in Spain. And you can see on the screen what he said, because he said, it's very important that somebody like APIIDA is moving in this direction, because I can foresee that I need this solution in the future. So here you can see the statement. And he said as well that in the future, he can foresee that he will use more of these vendors. And he's not the only one. As we have spoken with many other ones, I would like to show you the video of Mike Scherer. Mike Scherer from Helvetia, and what he stated about the Federated API Management. Please.
API Integration und API Management ist für Helvetia Versicherungen ein strategisches Thema. Wir verwalten mittlerweile mehrere API Gateways und Federated API Management ist für uns ein interessantes, wichtiges Thema, um damit unsere Integrationslandschaft effizient verwalten zu können.
As you can see, even he said, it's very important, because he thought about this already 2 years ago. And he said, I was wondering why nobody keeping up on this, because we can also foresee that we need more than one gateway in the future from different vendors. That said, we would like to poll, ask you some questions, and can you please put it up so we get an understanding where you are in the moment. Are you using more than one runtime? Are you using what you're going to do in the future? Please put up the poll. And we're spending here for 10, 15 seconds just to give you time to check the boxes. And afterwards, we're going to start the presentation with another topics. And we will also have another video from another customer to talk about what he thinks about in the fintech industry about distributed management, federated API management. Then thank you again. Now Markus is coming up, our CTO.
Yeah, so welcome from my side as well. So thanks for the introductory words by my colleagues. And now we will take a closer look at the capabilities of our control plane and the actual use cases. So what are the cases that customers that are already on the system and customers we are talking with, what are the use cases that they are really looking forward to solve with our product? So without further ado, we look at the capabilities. Now, such a control plane for federated API management, what should it be able to do? What capabilities does it need in order to get its job done? So first of all, if you want to have that single source of truth for all your APIs, the first capability that you have to deliver in such a control plane is the capability to discover the APIs and not only the APIs, but also their specifications. So that you really get together all the information that are currently deployed in your different API management systems. And that should be done in an automated fashion. So what you don't want to have is that you might have some additional APIs that are not within your control plane, that are not within your single source of truth. Control plane always should have the full APIs or all of the APIs in your system. The second capability that the control plane should be able to do is it should be able to manage consuming applications and their API keys. So if you think about it from a management and from a governance point of view, what you want to know is first, what APIs are there? And then shortly after that, who is able to access these APIs? Why is he able to access these APIs? Can I shut off access with the flip of a switch? And you don't want to have different processes for the different API runtimes that you are running. You want that one central place where you can go, see all of the consumers, see the traffic of all of the consumers, and can decide that this third party won't be able to access any of your APIs anymore. So that is one of the central capabilities of our control plane. The third capability that the control plane should have, it should bring together all the analytics data from the different platforms. And this is especially important if you, as a consumer of APIs, want to know how many calls did I do, were these calls successful, were there errors, what were the error messages, what were the response times on average, minimum, maximum, all these different kinds of questions that you want to answer. You always want to answer these on all of your APIs. You're not only interested in a subset of these APIs, but in all of them. And that means that the control plane needs to bring together all of the information from the different platforms. But it doesn't stop there. So you need even more capabilities, like you need also provisioning part, right? So you want to roll out APIs to your different systems. You want to make your backend systems available. And you don't want to have a dedicated process for every platform. You don't want your developers, your backend developers, to spend thoughts on, okay, which platform will that run on? What did operations say? Okay, how does it work again? Wait, I can't remember. I only deployed to the other platform the last few months. So what you want to have is you want to have unified processes. You want to have one single workflow, one single type of pipeline to provision your APIs. And of course, to migrate your APIs from different stages to other stages. So if you want to promote your APIs from development to testing to production. Of course, you can do that within every API management platform. But wouldn't it be great to have that one centralized platform where you can do all this? And that is exactly what we are delivering. Another capability, of course, is scanning for API and quality issues. And that is basically a no-brainer. So you now have a system where all your APIs come together, where all the specifications of your APIs come together. And our control plane even is capable of reading the definition of the API proxies. In some systems, they are called services. In some systems, they are called flows, whatever language the system uses. But you have different capabilities there, like stripping information that you don't want to be included in the response, authenticate against different identity providers, transform the request before it reaches the backend and retransform it back into, for example, JSON in your API. So we can have insights into all of this information because we gather them in one central location. So for every API within our control plane, and we will see that in the demonstration in a minute, we calculate a security score and a quality score. And that means that you can always be sure that you have high quality APIs, that you have secure APIs, that your APIs adhere to your corporate guidelines. And last but not least, a capability that we are currently developing, which will be available in 2023, is what we call the Open Proxy Spec. Now, what is the Open Proxy Spec? The Open Proxy Spec is kind of similar to the Open API specifications. And you know the Open API specifications. It's the de facto standard to describe a REST-based API to the outside world. So the Open API specification, that is geared toward the consumer, and it has all the information that are needed to consume an API, like what endpoints are there, how do the payloads look like, how do the responses look like, when it's successful, when there is an error, and so on and so on. And the Open Proxy Spec that we are currently developing basically has the same idea, but for the publishing side. So we want to have a vendor-independent specification that contains everything that you need to publish an API to your different API management systems. So what about authentication? Against what identity provider? Using what technology? What about security? Do I need some IP filters applied? Do I need some transformations happening, like stripping header information from the backend because you don't want to disclose what backend systems you are using? So there's a whole lot of things that need to be considered there, with the eventual goal that you write this one specification, and then you can use our control plane or any other control plane that decides to join forces with us to push these APIs to your respective API management platforms. So you get a vendor-independent way of specifying your API proxies, like you have a vendor-independent day to specify what the consumer needs to do. And for this to work and to really be comprehensive, we would like to have your participation. So if you are interested in having a tool like this, please get in touch with us. We would like to have your use cases. We would like you to have your ideas around that. So then when we release it in 2023, it's ready to use for your use cases. So we are going to develop that in the open, and you are very much happy for you to participate in that. So let's look at some use cases now. What type of situations can you solve with our control plane? What are the type of situations that basically need a control plane? The first use case that we have is the one Armin already talked about. You move to the cloud. So a lot of the customers that are already using API management systems, they bought these systems when they had their data centers all on premise. And for a lot of systems, because of security concerns, because of regulations, it might be even the case the next few years that they stay in on-prem data centers and cannot be moved to the cloud. But of course, you don't want to use your on-prem data centers forever. And a lot of companies are doing the move to the cloud. And of course, you want to use things like serverless computing. You want to use cloud native functionality. And as we all know, an API gateway works best when it is as close to your backend system as possible. So if your workloads will run in the cloud, your API gateway should be too. Now, what you can do is you can bring your on-premise API gateway with you into the cloud. So there are a lot of good projects happening out there. We do a lot of those projects with customers where we help them bring their on-prem solution into the cloud as well, have it dynamically scaled, and so on. But if you only have a few workloads, or if you are having an IT strategy that will have a move to the cloud for everything in the next few years, you probably want to use one of the cloud native API management gateways. So for example, if your workloads are running on Azure, you want to be on Azure too with your API gateway. So in that scenario, you still have your on-prem services running your legacy API management product, and you have some cloud services running the cloud API gateways. And then exactly you have the situation that Armin described. You now have at least two different systems that you want to keep in sync, that you want to have unified in one central place, where you want that one single source of truth. in order to realize stuff like API and data marketplaces, or governance questions like, are all of my APIs secure? Are they looking the same? Are they developed in the same way? And so on. So this is a very, very typical use case for the control plane. The next use case we have is a bit similar, but with the addition of a lean governance approach. So with lean governance, what we mean is that you want to have your governance interwoven in all of your processes. So you don't have to do a lot of extra effort in order to get your governance right. So in an example like this, you might have multiple data sources. You want to unify them in that one marketplace, as we have seen in the first use case. But now you want all your processes to have quality gates, for example, that prevent that prevent bad APIs from reaching your marketplace. So in that case, if you set up your system like this and let the control plane handle both the unification and the governance, you basically get all these things for free in your pipelines, in your workflows. Moving on to the next use case is one that we call brand shops. Now, you might find setups where one company or one group, one holding, has a lot of different brands in the marketplace. And these different brands, you not always want people to be able to see that they basically belong to the same company, right? So you want to have a strict isolation of your API catalogs, of your API portals by brand. So for example, you might want to have, if you're in the banking industry, you might want to have your old school traditional banking house, and you want to have a new neobank which addresses customers below 25, for example, and you don't want to burden this brand with the legacy brand that has been around like for 200, 250 years. That's not what you want to convey. You want to convey you're one of the cool banks. So you want to keep them apart. You want to keep them isolated. But of course, you don't want to run two different environments, or you don't want to run really separated data centers for them. So in that case, the control plane works kind of the other way around. So instead of having one developer portal where all your APIs are shown that are running on one system, you want to segregate them. So you want a brand shop for brand A that does only contain APIs that are in use by this brand. And you want to have it completely isolated, different users, different customers, different branding, and so on and so on. So in that case as well, you can use the control plane as an intermediary layer and get the flexibility that what you do above that layer is totally isolated from the things that happen below. So another big benefit of that setup is that you now can change everything that's below your control plane, and it doesn't have any effect on anything the consumers see, the customers see. So you can lift and shift your gateways to the cloud. You can add new gateway systems. You can retire old gateway systems, right? So you can move the API workloads like you see fit, and the control plane builds the abstraction layer in between. So coming to the next use case, and that as well is a very typical one. If your company is organized in as a centralized group and then independent business units. And a lot of the time, these business units also have control over their IT. And the group IT, the central IT, is only responsible for making sure everyone plays by the rules, everyone adheres to the guidelines. And of course, there are accounting topics, accounting issues that need to be solved. Again, you probably not run own data centers for each business unit. You use one big data center or one big hybrid cloud approach for your group. And that means you have to divide costs between the different business units. And that is typically a task carried out by the group IT. as well as making sure everyone stays within the guidelines, everyone adheres to the style guides, and so on. Up until now, what usually happened is that either the group IT didn't want to have the responsibility to do that, because they say, okay, every business unit can choose what they want. They can use what they want. So how are we gonna do governance on that? We can't. How are we gonna do accounting on that? We can't do it because they can just choose what they want. So that was the first possibility. Or the second possibility was that group IT decided on the tech stack for all of the business units. So really a top to bottom approach, pushing down architectural decisions. Now, these architectural decisions, they might not fit what the different business units would like to achieve. And that means that either you have a subpar experience, or the business unit IT starts to fight the central IT. And that is a case that you don't want to have. What the control plane allows, that is unifies all of the different technologies used by the business unit, at the same time allowing the central IT to do governance, to do accounting, because you see every request, because you can check every API if it still is according to the guidelines. So that is the third, or that is the last use case for today. And now, seeing all these use cases, let's go over the benefits again, because now they are clearer why federated API management in general and our control plane are such a great fit for a lot of organizations. So the first thing is that you catalog and manage access on any platform, right? So you have all the APIs in one place, you manage all the API keys in one place. And that means that also your developers only have one place to turn to if they are looking for APIs. So you now have a team that is tasked with citizen development, or that is tasked with building new machine learning models for AI applications. Now they only have one place to turn to. They have the whole catalog of APIs of the company available to build their solution. So you have increased adoption, you have accelerated time to market or time to value, and you have a very much increased developer experience, or in short, it really drives your innovation. As I said, you want to have one process, you want to have one workflow for all of your platforms that you are using, and the benefits here are obvious, right? So you have reduced complexity because it's only one process. We take care of all the different things that need to be done. We take care of all the transformations that need to be done. You have improved productivity, and with that, you have increased business velocity. So as a result, you reduce your complexity and your cost throughout. The third pillar is that managing compliance and the protection of sensitive data is greatly enhanced. Auditing and enforcing IT security is so much easier when you have that one system that just knows all the APIs, knows how they are built. So what you get is you get a reduced risk of data breaches, you get reduced data exposure, and easier security audits. And in result, you get a highly increased governance and security. And all of these benefits, all of these use cases come together within our product, come together within the API control plane. And as Detlef and Armin said, we are very, very proud of being able today to release it to the public, to tell you all about it. And we're a month of hard work. It will still be a month of hard work ahead, but we're very confident that the API control plane will advance the API management industry as a whole and will allow every of our customers to leverage benefits within their API management. So next up, we will be looking at a demonstration of the system. So as I said, we are ready to go public with the product. That means that we're not only showing PowerPoint presentations, you will get a glimpse of the real product in real world scenarios. And the setup that we will be using for this demonstration is we are looking at a control plane installation that is connected to several environments. So it is connected to a Broadcom Layer 7 instance. It is connected to an Azure API Management instance. And it also is connected, or we'll take a look at how to connect it to a Gravity instance. So in this example, we'll have 3 different runtimes. As you have seen in the slides, and as you will see later on, there are even more systems supported. And of course, we will add more and more systems down the road. And of course, we will add a developer portal to that control plane to have a look at it. A little technical detail, so you get the demonstration better. So you know what some things in the demonstration are about. In order to understand that, I have to tell you, how do we connect to these different gateways? How do we connect to these different data planes, as we call them? Well, we do so by a specialized little software packet called an agent. And that agent basically connects to the gateway, connects to the API management platform, and makes sure that all the commands are translated accordingly. And that agent does not run within our data centers, it runs within your data centers. It runs next to your gateways, next to your management platforms as kind of a sidecar. And I will come to the benefits in a second. Just to mention it, whenever you have a system that we don't support out of the box, we can support that by creating a custom agent for it. And the best thing about it is you don't need us for it. So all the specifications are available, so you can build your own agents. And basically, you yourself, if you want to, are able to bring any system that you have onto the control plane, bridging whatever you have into the new era of API management. Of course, we are also happy to help you. Our development team is very good at integration, stuff like that. And we're really looking forward to the systems that you might run that we don't even know about. And we are ready to make it work for you, essentially. So let's jump into the demonstration. So welcome to the new era of API management. Welcome to APIIDA's API Control Plane. Let's jump into the environments. And as I've said, you can see that the system currently is connected to Azure and connected to Layer 7. The interesting thing, for example, if you really want to stress how distributed the system is, I myself am currently located in Kiel, which is northern Germany. Our Azure instance is hosted in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and the Layer 7 instance you are here to see is hosted within our own data center in Darmstadt, which is located near the middle of Germany. So as you can see, we are ready to take on hybrid approaches. We are ready to take on very complex structures with multiple data centers. Whatever you feel needs to be connected to our control plane, we can connect it. And as I've been talking about these agents have one big advantage that I would like to show you when we configure a new environment. So let's add the Gravity instance. And I just want to show you how easy it is to add a new instance to the system. So after we click register, we now need to choose which system we want to add. We want to add Gravity. We can give that a name. So let's call it Gravity then. Yes, it's a production environment. Color is nice. So what you now have is you now connect the system, which means we need credentials to connect to this gateway. Now, credentials, especially if they have administrative privileges on your runtimes, are a very sensitive topic. And that is the reason why this information that you will enter within this wizard here is never transferred to our backend. All we do is we create configuration files for the agent for you. so that you don't have to look up the syntax, so that you don't have to, wait, is it password or is it pass or how is that field called? So you don't have to think about that. You can enter the information right here into the wizard, but it is never transferred to our backend. It is never stored to our backend. What you get after you've filled in these fields is you can download the generated configuration file. And that configuration file goes into the agent. And as we have seen in that architectural overview, that agent runs as a sidecar, maybe in your own data center, maybe in your own private cloud, maybe in your own public cloud. But it runs within your systems, within your zones. So we don't have to do any connections from the outside to your API gateways, to your API management system, right? So that's very important. None of the credentials to your systems will leave your systems. None of them will be stored within our systems. So that is very important to keep in mind, especially if you look at some other systems that are out there or that are currently in development. A few of them actually store your credentials and build the connection from the outside to the inside. None of that with us. So to just finish up the example here and move on to the next page. Just give it address, enter some dummy data, and as you can see, the configuration file is downloaded and everything is happening in the client. Nothing is sent to the backend. And after that, you get a detailed explanation what you have to do, how to start the agent, where to get the agent from, and so on and so on. It also creates for you, if you are going to use Docker, it creates a Docker Compose file. We will also add the ability to add Helm charts and so on, but you get the idea. So it's a wizard guided approach that helps you in setting up the agent. So, and if we set it up, then we have, of course, to start the agent. We will skip that step for the demonstration, and for the sake of the demonstration, just delete that Gravity environment that we just added. So that is basically the environments and how to create them. And you're not limited. You can also have, for example, multiple stages in there. You can have dev, test, prod, and so on. Now, let's talk about the APIs. APIs get into the system in two ways. The one that I already told you is an automatic discovery. The second that you can also use is, of course, you can push APIs into our system. You can use the user interface to do so. You can use our APIs to do so. So if you have already set up some workflow, some pipeline that pushes your APIs through your different stages or to your platforms, you can also add us in there and have the API pushed into our system as well, if you like to. Or as we're doing now, we're just discovering APIs. And now what the system does, it talks to our Azure instance, it talks to our layer 7 instance, and it just scans the whole systems for APIs that are found on these systems. And that is what you get. So we didn't have to configure anything. We didn't have to do anything to the API management platform running underneath. We didn't have to do any changes to our layer 7, no changes to our Azure. And the control plane just scanned all of these different systems and found a bunch of APIs, found which version it is using. And if we go into one of them and have a look there, what we can see is our overview of an API. And as you can see, I already talked about that briefly. You now see that security score and that quality score. And behind that are rule sets that evaluate the API, that evaluate the API proxies. Of course, you can configure your own rule sets. You can add rules, you can remove rules, and so on. And of course, you can have a look at why the quality rating is like it is. So let's make that a bit bigger. It gives you all the errors. It gives you all the warnings, the violations of the different classes of your specification. And you can see the specification itself with the errors marked in the respective color. And the cool thing about this is that we keep track of this score for every version of an API. So if your API management system has support for version, or that is another capability of our control plane, if you don't get the APIs from your API gateway system, but from a Git repository, we can also fetch all the versions from the Git repository. And what you get is that you get a nice graph from these scores. So you see if you're doing better and better and better and better, or if your quality, if your security gets worse over time, and then you can act on it. So basically, idea is give something that you can act on. A bunch of warnings and errors is nice, but if you have it crunched down into one number, you can really see if you make progress or if you're falling behind. Now, I said we will use a developer portal here to have a look at the APIs. So let's make sure that our newly discovered API actually shows up in our catalog, shows up in our developer portal, and is ready to be used. So we set it to published, and we set it to public because we don't want to restrict it in any way. And that's it. You don't have to do anything more. Now let's switch over to our developer portal. Let's get that zoom bar out of the way here. All right, switch over to our developer portal. Log in again. And here we are. So we have that demonstration API that was there even before we started. And now we also have our new API here. And we have all the features that you expect from an developer portal. We can write additional documentation. We have different usage plans that we can use. Let's have a look at that. So what we want to do is we want to get access to this API. And now I forgot something to configure for that API. Of course, we need to use the system. We need to tell the system what plans are available for this API. So in order that we can subscribe to these plans. So let's have a look there. And now they show up. Free use is fine. And now it asks us, okay, what consuming application do you want to use for that, right? So what consuming application needs access to this API? Let's choose one of the existing ones, first demonstration. And now I have done a request to subscribe to this API. So usually you don't want everyone that's out in the internet, or that has even not everyone that has an access to your developer portal. If you decide to make it closed, you don't want them to subscribe to any API without any checks. And that is the reason why we built approval requests into the system. So as we've been seeing, I've been using Marilena's account to subscribe to this API. So now I, as an administrator, see that Marilena requested access to this API for use in this application, and her user belongs to this organization. So we will talk about organizations later on, but suffice to say, you have the ability to check every request for access for your APIs, and you can either approve it or deny it. Now, of course, we approve it. Okay, so everything's done. Request is approved. If you are using other tools, other workflow management tools, for example, for your approval request, that's fine. We can integrate with them as well. So you can do the approval in any system you like. So if we then switch over to our application, you can now see that in this application that we used in the developer portal, we now see our API key. So in order to show you that actually the subscription, the request for access to the API was successful, let's issue a call against this API. So I have Postman here. Configure the request. I just enter that API key that I just received. And well, sadly, my API plan has extended, but you get the idea. So I put some invalid API key there. You can see this API key is invalid, which basically means that the API key has been transferred over to layer 7 and it has been activated. It has been configured with the plan. Now, the good thing is that for all of that to happen, we did not need to go into the layer 7 developer portal. So I have that developer portal here, right? So we can log in, I can show you the application, I can show you the subscription and so on. But the important thing to take with you here is that for day-to-day operations, like subscriptions to APIs, like making sure that they show up in the developer portal, that they are bookable, that they are subscribable, you don't need to access any of the underlying platforms. And again, this does work with any API in the system. So for example, the Echo API here, that is an API that's stored in our Azure account, right? So we can hop over here. This is our Azure, right? And you can see the Echo API and the Pet Store on Azure. They are actually within our Azure resources. We automatically discovered them. So for everything that I showed you is the same, no matter if that API originally came from layer 7 or from Azure, or if I continued the creation from Gravity. So everything that happens stays the same. This is, for example, also a huge benefit for customer success for your support, right? So it's just one mental model. Your support, your IT support, your group IT support doesn't need to know how Azure works. It doesn't need to know how layer 7 works. They just need to know how APIIDA's API control plane works. And that's sufficient, right? So everything for day-to-day operations you can do within the system. Now, as I said, one of the capabilities as well is gathering analytics data. So let's go into that API. And it tells us that there were 4 requests today, right? Of course, we did a little check on the system before we started the demonstration here. So we have 4 calls in total today. We have average response times. And we can also look at that in this view, for example, where you get the different HTTP result codes and so on. You also get minimum, maximum values. So you get the whole span, like in what region were the response times of my requests, what was the average. So you get a good feeling for maybe service degradation, where your APIs become slower and slower and slower over time. And again, this analytics is the same for all of the different systems. It doesn't matter if the API runs on Azure. It doesn't matter if the API runs on layer 7. We bring it all together and give you one interface to query it. And of course, if you want to run deeper insights, if you want to run more data science on it, data extraction on it, of course, we can also gather all the data and then push it into a system of your choice. And we can label the data accordingly. I think that's the biggest issue here. If you can create a lot of data, your biggest problems most of the time is not the amount of data, but the labeling of the data. And of course, the control plane knows exactly this API, this application running on this system has generated this data. So it's much easier for labeling. And we can also see that the other way around. So if we go to our application list, like all the consuming applications in the systems, we also have the call graph, right? So we also know the hits an application made over time. And the cool thing here is that that is the combined score of all your different platforms. So I can view that for layer 7. I can view that for Azure. Now, of course, I didn't do any calls to Azure, but they would show up here. But you get the idea, right? So if you have a consuming application that makes use of APIs running on different systems, everything comes together in that one place. So I briefly mentioned organizations, and I think that is also a big part of especially when you target, as we do, your solution for complex scenarios, is not everyone is the same. So even from the publishing side, you always need to have someone that is responsible for an API, that basically owns the API, and in our system, for example, that can decide on those requests coming in, right? So you need someone familiar with the API, familiar with what it does, in order to decide if a customer, if a consumer has the need to use this API. So what we have is a feature that is called organizations. So you can use these organizations to segregate your publishing side, like, okay, this API is published by that part of the organization, but also your consumer side. So you can build teams that consume APIs. And for example, especially these API keys, right? So they are a sensitive information. They are something that you want to protect. And that means that if you have multiple teams that have consuming application, or if you're using developer portal and open it up to the internet, then of course, your one customer doesn't need to know, is not allowed to know actually the applications from your other customers. So you can use these organizations to tell them apart, to segregate them, and to make sure that you only show them what they need to see. So yeah, I think with that little rundown through the systems, we can conclude the demonstration. At the end of the event, we will have room for answering your questions, I think, and to have a bit of a discussion if you're interested in, if something maybe wasn't clear enough in the demonstration. And of course, we can then jump back into the product and see directly in the product how something might be solved, how some of your issues might be resolved. So just jumping back to the presentation, you heard what the system is capable of. You heard what, or you saw how it looks like, how it behaves like. And now the next thing that you might be interested, of course, is how to get a hold of it, how to get started using it. And for that, I give over to Marilena.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus, for the demonstration. We are very proud of the product and the outcome and of the team and the work the team delivered here. And we want to give you now the exclusive opportunity to participate in our early access program. So to be part of that program, I invite you to simply visit the APIIDA website and request your trial on the API Control Plane product page. I put a link here on the slides so you can see where you have to go exactly, but you'll find it easily on the website. We will contact you shortly after to get you started with the onboarding process. And with that trial version that you get there, you get a 30-day free version of our professional tier, which gives you the opportunity to integrate the product and test its features extensively. So, but what does it mean exactly when I'm talking about a professional tier? And to clarify that, I brought an overview of the tiers that we're going to offer. So generally, the product is always available in a free of charge version, which contains basic functions and everything related to governance. To connect runtimes like in Azure and AWS or Layer 7, the professional version is required, and therefore the 30-day trial version is a good way to get started and test the full functionality. If you run a large and heterogeneous ecosystem of runtimes, you want to be able to self-host optionally, or you have the need for multiple developer portals, you will find what you're looking for in our enterprise version. And myself or our sales team will be absolutely happy to advise you on this and help you get started. So I think, Armin, you will take over from here again, right?
So thank you, Marilena. Can you hear me? Thank you, Marilena. And we do have another customer. No, it's not the wrong one. Change it. So we do have another customer who gave us some testimonials. What he thinks about the control plane. He's actually coming from the fintech industry and is Gregor Heinrich, CTO of Credit Shelf. Please go ahead.
Credit12 is part of the fintech and banking ecosystem. In order to innovate and create new services efficiently, we've adopted an API-first strategy. But one thing is for sure, complexity will grow in the future, and we foresee a need to manage APIs across different platforms. The APIIDA API Control Plane will allow us to do this efficiently and also to ensure governance. This way, we will be able to manage APIs that run across different platforms like AWS or Azure.
So, all right, thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much to our customers who have participated in giving everyone an insight into their views on the notion of federated API management and their environments and what they are planning going forward. Before we go to the Q&A session, one thing we wanted to come back to is the results of the polling, as I think that was a bit too quick when we moved over to the product. So let me just share the results of the polling again with everyone in regards to how many API management runtimes or vendors do you currently use or are you planning to use, and what vendors do you use, and are you planning to add additional ones going forward, right? So here are the results. So please take the time to just review the results before we move on. Okay. Now let's move over to the Q&A session. Give me just 1 second here. All right. So as far as logistics is concerned, if you want to ask a question live, as said, please just take the opportunity to use what is called the raise your hand option in the Zoom client, at which point we'll unmute your own line. You would still need to confirm that you want to unmute your microphone, obviously for data privacy reasons. Alternatively, as said, you may use the Q&A module of the Zoom client. And while we're waiting for live questions to come in, let's start with questions which we had during the session. And let me just read those out. The first question was, will you be able to control or integrate with bespoke in-house API platforms? If so, how long could this integration take to deliver to the customer?
Yeah, I think probably I'll be the one to answer that. Yes, as I said, because of our architecture that makes use of the agents, of course, you can create a customized agent for that bespoke in-house API platform, whatever the technology might be. So we have seen customers that basically build their own platform from the ground up. How long does it take? Depends basically if we are doing it or if the customer himself is going to do it, because we are of course familiar with how the protocol works and what information we need to retrieve. So to give you an example, we did some tests with some of our customers in the closed beta program, and we delivered a customized agent in a matter of weeks, right? So that is really, really fast. Given the fact that you have to be able to connect to it, that you have to be able to have a sandbox to test and so on and so on. But we're really not talking about big efforts here. It becomes a bit more tedious, of course, if we're not talking about one platform, but a platform that is made up of about like 20 or 30 different components. So it depends on the complexity, but we're talking weeks here, not months, not years.
All right. Thank you so much, Marcus. Hope that answered the question. Second question is, will Control Plane be able to create standardized APIs from this product?
Yes, we will be able to do that. As I said, we are currently looking into that open proxy specification. That's something that will happen in 2023. Up to 2023, we will be able to do that with a templatized approach where you create templates that are not movable, if you will, that don't transcend from one gateway platform to another. So if you are staying within one platform, we can have that templated approach that is I'm ready to use starting early next year. If you want to do it in a fashion that is able to move over from one gateway system to the other, then we're looking for some time into 2023.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Next question is the quality and security rating customizable?
Yes, it is. So what we have behind the scenes is something that we call a rule set catalog, which we feed with community-based best practices catalogs and rule sets. But of course, you can write your own rules as well. So for example, the thing with the community-based rule sets is most of them only focus on the OpenAPI spec, for example. So only on the consumer side. If you want to check anything that's on the publishing side, then those community rule sets most often don't have any rules in them. So we provide as well some rule set that we found in our projects with customers. And remind you, we are not, in business since like yesterday. We are doing that stuff since a few years. So if there are some rules that we think make sense on the publishing side, we add them to what's called the APIIDA recommended rule set, and you can pick from those rules. And if that isn't enough, you have the option to write your own rules.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Marcus. Next question I have here is migrate APIs is in the capabilities. Can you even migrate policy of APIs? It is hard work.
Yes. Again, the answer is similar to what I said earlier. In what the product can do right now or at very early next year is that you can migrate within the same platform. So for example, if you have like a dev environment, a test environment, a production environment in layer 7 or in Azure, you can promote the API, you can migrate the API, including the policies within that platform in order to transcend or in order to switch the platform. So go from Azure to Broadcom or from Broadcom to Gravity or whatever you would like to do. That will be available with services described in the Open Proxy specification.
Okay, perfect. Next one is the control plane and the developer portal. Do they come together as a unique offer? I think combined offer is the question, right?
Yes. Yes. So that's basically everything in the package right now. And to bring it together with the next question, which is, are styling and branding possible on the developer portal? Yes, of course, you can style and you can brand the developer portal. We are currently evaluating different approaches there. So what we're going for is maximum flexibility. So if you have, for example, a really dedicated branding, if you have a really dedicated company identity and really want to put a lot of effort in your developer portal, what we have is what we call reference implementation that you can just take and either use it as it is, right? Just replace the colors, replace the text, replace the images, whatever, and then use that. Or that you can use really as a reference to build your own developer portal if you would like to. So we're going for maximum flexibility here there. But having a developer portal, as we've seen, Marlena has shown the different tiers, a simple catalog where you don't have the option to subscribe to an API is available in the free tier as well. So you get that catalog for free essentially. And all the other tiers have a developer portal in the license as well. And if you go for the enterprise tier, you have an unlimited number of developer portals. So you can spawn as many portals as you want.
All right. Yeah, as you say, I think that answered the next question as well. And the next one I have on here is an API have to be designed and will be deployed on one platform, for example, on a layer 7 gateway. Can that be used on AWS or Kong, or will you need to develop a specific one for each vendor?
that is again basically the open proxy spec, right? So if you discover an API, so what we've done in the demonstration, right, just hit that one button and get all the APIs in, that of course means the APIs are tailored to that platform, and I can't move them to any other platform. So I cannot discover it on layer 7 and then declare it to be an Azure one. That doesn't work. But if the API has been designed using the open proxy spec from the start, then it can be moved from one gateway to the other. Unless, of course, that's an option that the open proxy spec will offer. It will have extensions. So if you're using a custom extension or an extension that is specifically geared towards Kong, right? Because there is that super specific Kong plugin that you absolutely want to use, then of course you can't move that to a platform that doesn't have that plugin. But if you're, I think, in line with like what 80 or 90% of the API proxies we see in the wild look like, then you can just create them using the open proxy spec, and then you are able to move them to whatever platform you like, and we take care of all the transformations happening.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Next question I have is, can I create an application on the control plane consisting of APIs from multiple vendors?
Yes, you can absolutely do. You can create an application on the system. That's just when you start with it and you just create that application, it just lives in the control plane. The moment you start subscribing to APIs, it is distributed to your whole system. So if you start to subscribe a layer 7 API, your application will move to layer 7. If you then also subscribe an API on Azure or on AWS, right, or on APIIDA, which will be coming later, then this application is moved there, is transported there as well. So you can do applications, or that's the big benefit as well. So you can subscribe to APIs running on different systems. The only thing that you can't do, obviously, is you can't do a quota on the combination of all the APIs. So what you can do is like, you can say, okay, 1,000 calls to this API on layer 7 and 1,000 calls to this API on AWS is allowed. But you cannot do is you cannot say 1,000 calls to whatever API wherever it is running, because that would mean that we would be constantly having to exchange live data between these different platforms. That is something that we don't want to do because of performance reasons. So that is the only limitation that you have here. There is no other limitation. So as I said, if we aggregate the analytics spec, we can combine them. So you get the total number of calls across all your systems. You get the total average, if that makes any sense for you, depends on the use case, response times, and so on. So the basic analytics, we bring that all together. And that is especially one of the cases because what systems is running your APIs, that is of no interest for your consumer. Your consumer doesn't care. He goes to your developer portal, he sees, oh, that's an API I would like to use. Click. Oh, that's API I use as well. Click. So a very basic example, you might run an SAP system. SAP has its own API hub. So you have all your SAP APIs living in that hub. And because you want to create a customer success or customer service app for manufacturing company, you also want to tie in data from your production planning systems, for example. So then, of course, that's not running on SAP, that's a different platform, so you have another gateway. But that one application, that one customer success, customer service application needs to access both APIs. That's a classical use case for our solution, and it's absolutely possible.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much, Marcus. Now, are there any further questions? Again, if you want to ask a live question, just press that raise your hand button so we can open up your line. Alternatively, use that Q&A function of the Zoom client. And of course, you can drop us an email, send us a note, give us a call at any time, as always. Okay, sounds like there are no further questions at this point. So for now, let me thank all of you for having joined us today for the launch excuse me, of the APIIDA API Control Plane. We are, as said now, announcing the availability of the early access program. So if you want to take part and want to get your hands on to the product right away, just go to apida.com, go to the product page, and let us know. There's a simple form to fill in, and we'll be in touch shortly to give you the credentials and help you get started with the platform. With that, again, let me thank you so much, and we very much look forward to seeing you in one of our webinars, and of course, to seeing you in Paris in 2 weeks' time at the API Days, where we'll be exhibiting. We'll also be hosting a talk, and we'll be hosting a workshop on Federated API Management. So if you're in Paris, please make sure you stop by. With that, again, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.